Welcome to the New to Wrestling podcast, where I, your host, Xavier Cruz, a lifelong wrestling fan, will take a lifelong friend through the action, the joys, and the drama of the world of professional wrestling. My co-host, Kelsey Silva, has been bitten by the wrestling bug, and I want to invite you to join us as I take her through the moments that made me a fan. So if you're new to wrestling and would like to get brought up to speed, or a fan who would like to relive some classic matches, promos, and segments through fresh eyes, join us as we embark on a journey through the Attitude Era and beyond. Welcome to the New to Wrestling podcast. Hello, and welcome to another edition of the New to Wrestling podcast. This week, we watched the November 4th, 1996 edition of Monday Night Raw, and the match card is as follows. We had Goldust with Marlena versus Barry Windham, the Stalker. We had the Pug versus the Sultan. And in our main event, we had Mark Miro with Sable versus Fake Razor Ramon with Fake Diesel on the side.
And we'll never let it go.
No, I will be bitter about it until they go away.
That's it.
All right, let's get into it yet, because this one was wild. Absolutely insane.
So insane. And like, I think you said it. You were like, it's crazy because the matches weren't crazy.
No,
it was everything else.
Everything else about this episode was wild. The actual wrestling in this episode was there was wrestling. I'll say that.
It happened. I saw it.
Wrestling, yes.
Did it change my life?
No, not at all. But that's okay. Some episodes are going to be more, character based or plot based.
Yeah.
And we just we got to run with it. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
The only people that are probably disappointed are the people that bought the tickets, like, to see the show.
I didn't even think of that. Wow, that sucks.
Chances are, like, we are only seeing a portion of what gets what gets put on in front of a live audience.
Right.
We've been to a more recent like AEW like taping, but they did. We went through Dynamite, which is live, and then they immediately taped Rampage right after.
Right.
So chances are we're seeing like this group of like episodes that we watch has happened over a period of like time. So like we're probably not seeing every match that is had at the live event. We're probably not seeing televised.
Well, that makes complete sense.
All right. Yeah. So the episode starts with a little recap from last week between the two kind of promos, like the interview / promo thing that we had going on between Stone Cold Steve Austin and Bret Hart. Essentially just kind of bringing us up to speed as we barrel towards their match at Survivor Series. And then
someone coughed during the intro, by the way.
Oh, fully. So they introduced like the episode. They're like, live from wherever we are. And then the music playing, and at some point during the intro music, you just hear somebody very audibly like clear their throat, and you're just like, wait a minute. Like it was just such a like, I caught you. It's like when you see the boom mic in like television shows, and you're like, gotcha.
And it wasn't even like a subtle little.
No,
it was like,
no. It was a clearing of the pipes. It was.
And we were both like, was that?
No, literally, I was writing a note, just like from the intro, just to like, because I write notes so that I remember what we watched.
You're good at your job.
Thank you. And I like looked up, and I was just like, did someone just like hack a lung? Like, what just happened? It was just a funny little like gotcha. I love like seeing little mistakes like that on television.
Those little reminders that it's live TV.
Right. Exactly. And then we get our first match, which is Goldust with Marlena. We haven't really seen too much of Goldust since the pay-per-view, which is, it's fine. He was kind of like heavy in a lot of storylines like before, but it makes sense like as we're introducing other people and kind of getting to know them that we're not going to necessarily see Goldust every single week. But we are setting up towards the classic Survivor Series I think it's 4-on-4 match between Crush, Triple H, Jerry the King Lawler, and Goldust versus the Stalker, Mark Henry, Rocky Maivia, and Mark Miro. And all of these participants decided to make their way down to the ring this time.
It was the family reunion.
So 100%. So we had the two actual participants in the match, Goldust and Barry Windham, who you pointed out, just decided to forego anything that makes the Stalker character the Stalker, because he didn't wear the face paint or like the top half of the costume. He had like the camouflage pants, but everything else that was like leading, like went into this character, like was just gone. He just decided to not do it today. I don't know
Yeah, and
what happened, but I don't know.
because they walked out and they said Barry Windham, the Stalker, instead of just
Right.
going like the Stalker. And I was like, first of all, he didn't debut that long ago. Like,
Mm-hmm.
maybe like
But they
5.
also did it. They also, when they introduced the pug a couple of weeks ago, they just introduced him as the pug.
Right,
Um,
well, that right.
and
But
now
then
we're
suddenly everyone's
like
Christian names are involved, government names.
right, one hundred
Not you
percent.
dropping the government names.
Not Vince finding the box of social security cards and just
Ugh.
decided like to just go with it.
Finally went and looked at like everyone's like
Paperwork.
photocopy driver's license
Yeah,
that they had to submit.
absolutely.
But I like
From
it
their
was
I-9 form or whatever
yeah,
like,
like just that black and white like blurry photocopy of your driver's license. But it was just funny because I was like, wait a minute. Like wasn't that the stalker? He had the whole face paint, the whole getup. It was
the
the whole
whole
thing. He
nine.
like
He came
never
out
said a
looking
word.
right. He's like a big game hunter. Like that was a whole
The
like
whole
thing.
thing, the whole
And
shtick.
then he just comes out, Barry Windham. Nice to meet ya. And you're just
Oh,
like, oh, you're just like,
clean face, fresh mustache, and then when he was wrestling, like Vince was literally like, and there's Barry with the right, and I'm like, Barry, like
right.
what are we doing right now?
100%.
It's so weird.
It was wild. So we have not only the two participants in the match, but we have all of the participants of the Survivor Series match kind of encircling the ring. Vince at one point says we basically have like a lumberjack match, which is essentially wrestlers surround the ring, and the whole point is that nobody really exits the ring to take like a breather or anything. You just get thrown right back in the ring. That is
Love
like
that.
there are no breaks there. So the match essentially like acted as a lumberjack match with either participant getting thrown in by their opposing teams.
Yes.
During this match, we do have an interruption from Doc, who tells us that he has Stone Cold on the phone and he wants to talk to Vince, which
is so silly.
right. 100%.
Like Stone Cold has like the direct line to Doc and was like, can you put Vince on?
Right. Like 100%. I'll wait here. Mm-hmm.
Can you
Mm-hmm.
I know he's working. Just put him on.
No, this is really important.
So put me through.
So essentially, Stone Cold says that he is like leaving the Cincinnati airport. Also, the entire time they say that Brian Pillman's home is in Cincinnati. Mind you, the entire time, every time Brian Pillman's house is brought up, and as in like it says Brian Pillman's home, and then it says something Kentucky, and you're just like, where are we? Are we in Kentucky? Or are we in Cincinnati? Like, I'm very lost.
And I don't know if they did that just to like protect his address or something, but it's like, can we at least like
yeah. And I feel like there's also kind of a little bit of like a misunderstanding as far as like Stone Cold's history with Brian Pillman. Brian Pillman and Stone Cold used to be a tag team. They were really, really big in the WCW, where they were called like the Hollywood Blondes. The Hollywood Blondes.
I was like, did Stone Cold have hair?
He used to have long.
Okay, because I was like, that would make no sense.
So they used to be a tag team called like the Hollywood Blondes, and they were really successful. They had really good chemistry.
I actually love that name. Actually,
the Hollywood Blondes. Yeah,
I think they
would do this like thing where they would like attack their like opponent, and they would follow them with like an old school like spinning camera.
Oh, man, how cute!
So stupid.
I love that.
But they were a tag team for like a long time, so there is all of that like kind of predating history like to this moment, which is why this is like so
crazy.
So
do you think they just don't want to mention the WCW? So they're like, this is all about Bret Hart because they're also trying to like work that Survivor Series match.
Yeah, and part of it was like Steve Austin's gripe in all of this was that Brian Pillman, instead of using his time to kind of like talk up his best friend Stone Cold, he was kind of singing Bret Hart's like accolades, which Stone Cold took great offense to, basically being like, oh, you're gonna like use this time to stand next to me and talk about the person that I'm gonna go like into battle with. Like that's you're my
Hmm.
best friend. Like that's how you want to play that.
I
Um,
see.
which
I
is kind
see.
of like where this like beef comes from. Mind you, this is like an escalated to like the umpteenth degree as far as the appropriate reaction for the action,
Yeah.
being that he has
No
already
kidding.
attacked Brian Pillman and quote unquote re-injured him. Chances are there were probably complications with this man like coming back to the ring anyway, and they needed an excuse to keep him out for longer. Um, which this is kind of like plays into that. So basically, Stone Cold's like, I'm gonna show up at his house. I'm gonna do exactly what I said I was going to do. I don't know why you all thought I was bluffing. I'm way too important for you to do anything. I'm just gonna do it, consequences be damned. And we're like, oh, okay. And basically, and essentially, that's what the commentary team does. Also, they're just like, well, there's nothing we can do about it, so we'll catch up. We'll catch up with you later. Um, ding ding ding, and like, so we just cut back to the match. So mind you, like, there is an injured man just sitting on the couch at home, and
Like
yeah,
literally tubes coming out of his bandaging because it's like he'd reconstructive surgery on his ankle or something.
right.
There's like fluid draining tubes. He's like,
Like, so there is a very injured man just sitting on a couch, and we are told point blank that another man is going to show up to do whatever,
we don't know.
and they just say, okay, we'll just catch up with you later.
Uh,
So
we'll
and
just
then
send a camera crew and see what happens.
right. So we do get back to the match.
There was a little tidbit during the match. I don't know if you saw where Clarence Mason and Marlena were like talking together. And I was like, what is that? Because it didn't seem malicious. And I know that
they're on the same
Peeps are
team
on the
here.
same team.
So I think they
So
were
they
probably
were
trying to coordinate like little strategy
I
kind of
love that though.
situation.
I loved seeing her interact with somebody else. And it seemed like obviously it's played up for
Right.
television, but like it seemed like an interesting conversation. I was like, God, to be a fly on the wall and whatever they're talking about.
Right,
Like that
right,
because
right.
she's doing the cigar and she's like doing like this and like
Right,
she's,
right.
making all the motions and he's like going like, oh, okay. Like and I was like, what are they talking about? I
Right.
want
I
to
want
know.
to know.
Obviously strategy, but I was like, oh God, I wish I could know.
We have this very interesting moment where where Barry Windham has Goldust propped up
Very,
like in the corner, Barry,
very.
big time Barry, and he's going to like, I don't know, perform like a superplex or something, and Goldust just lays a fat one on him. He just
A big
grabs him by
smoochy
like
smooch.
just Drake and Josh like kiss on the mouth, and you're
Yep.
just like, oh, and that knocks Barry like backwards. And then by that point, it's just a free for all where all of the participants from both teams just end up like invading the ring and attacking each other. Thus, the referee has no choice but to call for a double disqualification because there is no way to make heads or tails of
Of who
a
did what
participant.
first.
Yeah, exactly. There's too
Yeah.
much going on, so he's just like, you know what? Scratch this match. This one's too far gone. But it
What
does
a
lead
mess.
does a good job setting up like these are all the participants for the Survivor Series match, expected to be chaotic, expected to be like see combinations of people you wouldn't normally see. So like
Hmm.
it did its job. We'll put it that way.
Yeah. And we saw The Rock out in the ring for the first time.
Oh yeah. So The Rock did. So he is obviously part of the Survivor Series team, and he will be making his in-ring debut at the Survivor Series.
Crazy.
This is a big moment for us, especially considering where we're recording right now. The Rock actually just returned to the WWE
Yes.
very
Oh my.
recently.
I just,
So
yeah. So I just sent Xavier because I'm sure he'd already seen it, but I saw it, him return to the WWE, and I was like, dude, no way how we're about to watch his debut in the
mhm.
podcast, and he is like
But
returning to the WWE. Like,
right.
that is so weird and amazing.
And he
So
hasn't been back in
exciting.
like 10 close to 10 years. The last time he did anything like kind of like major, he had a couple back-to-back WrestleMania main events with John Cena, and then we haven't seen him.
Mm.
He's well, we have seen Dwayne the Rock Johnson. We haven't seen him
Everywhere in
in the
every movie.
context of the WWF or
Yes.
the in the context of the WWE in a while. We've seen Dwayne. We know he's been busy.
We've
Uh,
seen Dwayne.
we
We have seen Dwayne.
he just became the highest paid actor in history. So
Yeah.
it's fine. He's doing fine. But so it is very fun to like we are now just kind of seeing like we're seeing Baby Dwayne. We're seeing Rocky Maivia. And like where he gets that name is from his. So I don't know if you know this, but The Rock is a third generation superstar. So both his father and his grandfather were both wrestlers also.
I did know this.
So yeah. So the Rocky comes from his father, who's wrestled under the name Rocky Johnson, and then his father or his grandfather was High Chief Peter Maivia. So that's where he gets the two like names.
Oh, that's really sweet.
So yeah, so his father was actually one half of the first Black Tag Team Champions, like the first ones to ever do it. So his father was part of that team. And
wow, that's amazing.
yeah, and then his grandfather is kind of like the head of this kind of really famous like wrestling family, and they're all like Samoan. So that includes like the people like The Rock is related to, which you probably wouldn't think. Yokozuna, they're related.
Wait, what?
Yeah,
What?
The Sultan, also
What?
related. Yes.
Wait, by blood or like in the family? Like he's the head of a literal blood family of wrestlers.
A bunch of wrestlers, yeah. So like there's a bunch of them. So there's the High Chief Peter Maivia. There was the Wild Samoans, that was back in like the 80s.
Cool.
And then there's Yokozuna, the Sultan, who turns into Rikishi. I don't know like if you have seen Rikishi.
I have not.
And then in the modern times you get The Rock. And then today part of that family is Jimmy and Jay Uso. They like one of the most prolific tag teams today, like period. As well as Roman Reigns, who is the WWF champion,
I do know
or the
Roman
WWE
Reigns.
champion, and has been for the last 3 years. So they're all part of one really big family. So yeah.
Dang, what is in that water they're drinking? Oh my god, the whole family?
So yeah, so like it is really, really fun to kind of see the start of The Rock's career in the WWE, like, and especially knowing and the whole point, like in the WWE right now, the biggest storyline is like the Bloodline storyline, which is essentially based around Roman Reigns being like the head of the table of this family. So like he's like the one that's kind of taking the mantle right now. He's the big dog in charge. He's the one with the title that everyone's coming for, that nobody for the last 3 years has been able to like knock off. So the fact that we're seeing like we have all of these kind of like individual wrestlers that have kind of like chipped in a little bit, like as far as like creating this like now massive storyline, which has been like all encompassing for the last 3 years. Like this man has been in essentially every major pay-per-view, WrestleMania, like just any huge event, like whether it was overseas, for the last 3 years. And it's all kind of like a culmination of like, The Rock threw in his like, made his contributions. Yokozuna had his contributions. So it's all kind of like all leads into this Bloodline storyline. And it's crazy that like we're seeing a lot of these people's like parents right now, like wrestle.
Why do I have chills right now?
It's cool.
Like
it's very cool.
So cool. I love that. And to me, it like adds that element of like how I feel like the WWE and like watching wrestling like really transcends families, like even just as viewers. Like, oh, I watched it with my dad, I watched it with my uncle, I watched it with like my family members, and like how it literally transcends like generations between the actual wrestlers and the fans. And it's like, oh, I used to watch his dad wrestle, and like, oh, they're actually related to this. Like that is so cool. I love that.
Yeah, and
those family reunions must pop off. Sorry.
Probably, honestly. Well, they talk about it in how like the Rock had a show on Young Rock. They go into it a little bit as far as like the family and how like their interactions. It's pretty good. It's pretty funny actually. During that or after that match, it kind of cuts to a promo from Stone Cold just like on Bret Hart. So this is a pre-recorded kind of situation, and it essentially is like calling Bret Hart a coward. He left after he got beat by the boy toy. He's basically like going into just like, that's who beat you. That's who sent you home packing. Like, please, like don't even know what's coming towards you when a real man comes for you. I'm not fooling around. I don't showboat. I'm coming to kick your ass. And like,
and just because it was an insane promo, like to the point where it was so insane, I laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was like, this is insane. To set the scene for you guys, it was like black and white, and like that deep tone black and white where the black is like really dark. It was like in front of like an abandoned warehouse.
Yeah.
It was like chain link fence, tumbleweed. The clips were like short. He would like talk over himself just by the way they edited it. They had like the little clip of like the angry dog behind the fence like barking and snarling a few times. Like it was so, like, if they did their job of making him look as intimidating as possible, especially with like he's wearing like his black ensemble, he's saying all these fighting words, and he's just like standing in an alley like going like, you were beaten by the boy toy, and then it would cut to him over like, wait till you get beat by a real man, and then it was like snarling dog. Like it was so
Yeah, it was
crazy. I was just
nuts.
like what is going on right now,
Which is
and where did they film this?
such a like, this is what I'm talking, like the stark contrast as far as like we switched like pretty hard and fast as far as like, oh now we're like reality based, like all of a sudden, like not for nothing, but like a month ago we had like the plumber wrestling, and like, you know what I mean, and like that was all of the story, like we got to it. Now we're getting like these like whole ass vignettes, and like this whole thing with like Stone Cold and Brian Pillman's house, like weird, like where the WWF is actively making decisions to be like, we're gonna just blur the line a little bit, like we're just
Yep.
we're gonna not tell you what is real and what's not, and we're just gonna let you kind of like figure it out, because they're kind of understanding that like you can't hide everything from the fans, you know, even at this point, like where
Yeah.
internet is coming to, magazines are a thing, like people like back then used to like pass videotapes, like, you know, the rumor mill of wrestling has already like begun at this point. So you're not necessarily going to be able to hide everything from everybody, but you can kind of blur the line a little bit. You can just make them question, be like, was that real or was that some work? And
Wow.
that's a question like that they're always striving for, even like today, to be like, to make you think about it like as, wait a minute, did that mean to happen, or was that them just working, like what just happened? And like when you do that well is when you got people hooked,
I mean,
because now you want to know, now you're in it.
especially today's episode, girl. I know we're
We
gonna
were
get
in
to
it.
it, but I was
We
like
were in it.
screaming at the top of my lungs, crazy. But yeah,
um
wow, I love that. Crazy.
Amen. So after that promo, it barrels into kind of an announcement kind of shot of the Undertaker versus Mankind, which we will see at the Survivor Series. The premise of the match is that Paul Bearer will be suspended from a steel cage while the Undertaker and Mankind have a wrestling match. So
Just so crazy. Like,
and then that they give us kind of it cuts to an interview with Mankind, Paul Bear, and the Executioner. Mind you, the Executioner said nothing. He just
not a thing.
he stood in the back.
And he was wearing like a Halloween costume.
No, it was very
Executioner.
Party City. It was,
Very Party City.
yeah. I was like,
Very
is that
Halloween, whatever it is that they put up.
Halloween City, Halloween? What is it?
Why do I not know when they put them up like
Spirit Halloween or
Spirit
whatever.
Halloween? Thank
That's
you.
it. That's it.
Yes. Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
I
No,
was
no,
like,
no,
that
no.
would be so embarrassing if we didn't know what that was.
Literally, because they're like an invasive species. They're like,
An invasive talk of
dude, it does cut to a promo from Mankind. Basically Mankind is saying like, you should have stayed buried, like all you've managed to do was like piss me off, like all this like blah 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 nonsense. And then the Undertaker's gong hits, and his
Ooh, I got
voice
chills all over
just
again.
comes like just booming over the arena, and he just, it's fantastic. He's like, I'm here. The rumors of my like demise were greatly exaggerated, and he's like,
Mm.
I Paul Bear, I thought I'd give you a preview of like what's of your future. And it was just like, you know, his voice is so like deep and ridiculous. And so they drop the like steel cage that's like covered in this like fabric. The Executioner like goes out to like uncover it, and it is like a doll of Paul Bearer hanging upside down by his feet, just like dead looking in the middle. It's so good. And Paul Bearer does such a good job of like selling it, because you just hear him start freaking out, you know, just like, woo, like he just loses his mind. Because like, granted, if somebody had presented to me a like life-size replica of myself dead AF, I'd probably also feel some type of way about it. So
it is top tier intimidation tactic, and you love to see it, because the cage, like, you hear the gong and like you hear the Undertaker start talking, and like they had like dimmed the lights. And I also love when they do this. It's such a subtle touch, but it's so good. They have the lightning or thunder go off and they flicker the lights in time with it, so it seems like it's happening in the arena. Just love that. So subtle, so good.
So good.
But the lights go dark, and then literally in like the 5 seconds it goes dark and comes back on, the cage is already there. Right. And it obviously wasn't hanging there the whole time. Like, it just appeared. Like, they must have dropped it from the ceiling or something. And like, just the way it was done, because realistically, did he have to put anything in the cage? No. Like, the cage is already like scary enough. It's like one of those tiny little like steel cages you like
it's like a shark dives.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a shark
exactly.
Cage. It's essentially
And
we're putting this large man in a shark cage, and we're going to suspend him above an arena. That's what we've decided is the stipulation of a match. That is what we have all just been like, yep,
I'll take it.
Like, okay.
Buy my ticket. But like, it's just so insane. And then to have the life-size like mannequin doll of him hanging upside down too.
Perfect.
Such a good touch. Oh, so love to see it. Love to see it.
So that match is coming up at the Survivor Series, and of course, I've said this a few times on this podcast, I could watch them beat the hell out of each other forever. Like,
amen.
And I'll eat it up every time. I'll be just as entertained the like 20th time as the first time. So
it's so true. I will say it's interesting that, you know how like when there's a like a pay-per-view coming up, they'll usually have like the wrestlers like fight to look strong, or like they kind of have them out and about and they're like doing something. Not the Undertaker and Mankind. They are tucked away, except when they do these little moments like they just did.
Yeah.
And like that's it. Like we're not getting Undertaker on Raw fighting Goldust. Like, we're just not doing that.
No, and I think it does a good job, because they are both characters that a big part of their appeal is the mystique. And part of the mystique is like, you know, it's special when you see them. It's not a bit, you know what I mean? They're not overexposed. They're not going to put them on television every week because it loses the magic. You want to be impressed by the Undertaker every time he comes out. And like, I'm sorry, but if you see something enough times, or like, it's true over again, like it loses a little bit of its appeal. But so I think it's an excellent move. Just kind of, we are continuing the storyline, but I don't need to see Mankind like fight in a bunch of I know how physical Mankind can get.
Yes.
I know how physical the Undertaker can get. And we already have priors as far as like the two of them together, like creating something that's absolutely brutal. Ergo the Boiler Room Brawl, the Buried Alive match. So,
and it's not like people still aren't talking about those. Like, you don't even need a refresher, because we're still talking about those things.
Right. So it does a good job. Like, it progresses the story, but it keeps them kind of mysterious and like hidden away. And I love it.
They're like the wedding china. You only pull it out on like special occasions and holidays. It's like pull them out of the hutch.
Oh, love so that. Nice. And like, it's gonna be fantastic. So something to look forward to. We're going to transition out of that segment into the interview at Brian Pillman's house, or at least the first time we go back to it. We're going to go back to it a few times, so stay with me.
Yeah, buckle in.
So basically, Kevin Kelly is asking Brian Pillman about his surgery, and basically, like, what's the prognosis? What are the doctors saying? Brian Pillman's like, I'm alive and well. Good things coming for like 1997. We're in November. So, hopefully we get to see Brian Pillman wrestle at some point.
One day.
But basically, and then he gets asked about Stone Cold, and Brian Pillman basically goes in to say that there is a fine line between business and making something personal, and you have made this personal. He's like, and then he goes into like kind of his usual like wrestler like bravado, basically being like, no one's gonna know like you as well as like your best friend, like your partner. I know your strengths, I know your weaknesses, like I know blah 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 blah.
Which I'm glad he finally like somebody said it,
right?
Like, because that there is like so much depth to this because me, who didn't know that they were a tag team before this, I was like, I don't understand really why this beef is so serious. Like, I don't get it. But now that I know the history, I'm like, oh, this is nuts. Like, this is really insane. So I'm glad he said it.
So yeah, so we get that, like, Brian Pillman kind of goes into like a little bit like of a wrestling promo, and basically then at the end of that, pulls out a gun and is basically just like, I have this waiting for Stone Cold if he decides to show up. So
out from under his blankie on the couch, like he's like tucked in a little blankie on the couch,
fully,
and then he's
like one little
if he
foot
does
like propped
show up,
I got this. Like, it's like, oh, I'm sorry, Brian, you were strapped the whole time. Like,
while his wife is like sitting like demurely like on the couch, like whatever behind him, the armrest, and she's just like, oh.
And like I can understand like the whole like protect your house kind of scenario if that's what's going on. But like a film crew was invited to your home today, and you decided to sit on your couch, brandish a weapon, and then just wait? Like what? Like what? So
it's the tucking it under the blanket for me. It's like just at least on a table or like in a
something
holster,
in a holster.
Like I don't know.
Give me something. No,
something. Not like, what are you keeping it warm? What is it tucked in like a lapdog? Like I don't understand. Like I was like,
mess.
And I guess it's for like the dramatic effect of like, well, I got Jimmy right here just in case. But it's like, what?
Where? Why? What? Like what?
It would have been better if he had been like, Deborah, get the gun. Like, and she just like got up
and sent her away.
and came
like,
back,
not for nothing. She didn't do anything. She just she was just there. Like, but she was just there to kind of like escalate the fact that he was like attacking like a family. You know what I mean?
Yes, but they were like, we sent the Vince McMahon somehow knew like they had sent the kids to grandma's house over the river through the woods. Yeah, for safety. But she's like, I'm standing by my man so that if something happens, our children will be orphans. Like it's just like
no, like we both gotta go, clearly. So after it brandishes the weapon, it cuts to Stone Cold is outside. Is just fully outside, and he is just beating up all of Brian Pillman's friends. And mind you, he's in like the garage or like the driveway. We're like having this whole scene. This man uses everything at his disposal. He throws a full garbage can just like into the gut of one of these guys, one of these guys. He then throws him into the garage, turns his attention to the other guy, opens the car door and just starts squishing the guy's head in it, like just vehemently. And then the other guy like comes and like attacks him, and then he goes and like brings him over into a kiddie pool and starts drowning him.
Just drowning him in a
kiddie pool.
Literally head in. I was like, ow! Like this is gonna kill him.
Absolute heinous. And the best part, the best part is there's a little red wagon just sitting.
A radio flyer.
And this man just picks it up, and with all of the vitriol that this man could muster, he just yeets this little red wagon at this dude's head. He like absolutely decked him. And then while he's on the ground reeling from this like ridiculous like wagon shot, he breaks off a piece of the kiddie pool and just like throws it at his face, just like absolutely yeets it at him, like as if he was just a sack of shit.
And it hits him so hard in the face, it breaks further. Like it literally hits his face and shatters. I was like, these people better be like paid stuntmen, because otherwise I don't know.
That was heinous.
That one guy really, like, I know the one guy got hit by the garbage can and then into the garage and the car, but the one guy who got almost flogged and then the wagon and then hit with the other people as like an afterthought, just like
he got hit with an absolute wagon,
like a projectile. Like,
just like absolutely, I can't.
It was so crazy.
It was so funny though.
It was hysterical.
I've never been more just like, he got hit with the wagon and I cackled like
because it's ridiculous.
Screaming with laughter because just the way that it hit him was just, I couldn't have done it. Like if I had imagined it better, I couldn't. Like there's no way.
And that is a noise you can't duplicate. No. The sound of wagon hitting cranium. They can't do that in those like sound studios. They can't.
No. What was that? Those Foley artists?
The
could
Foley art, thank you. Yeah, Foley studio. You can't do that.
never.
Never.
So we then get cut from that because there's still a
Yeah.
wrestling show going on. By the way, BT Dubs, still a wrestling program going on. And
Oh yeah,
in
in case you
case,
missed it.
hate to interrupt your episode of Cops, but
I was just gonna say it was like an episode of Cops because it was like the one camera with like the really bright spotlight, like just being like, what is happening?
what is going
It was
on?
just like an episode of Cops.
So then we get into the following match, which is Alex the Pug Porto, which is the first time I've heard his whole name. Versus the Sultan, which is the second time in like, I don't know, I want to say like 2 months that we've seen him.
Yeah.
So the Sultan,
I forgot about Bob Backlund.
Listen, how lucky for you.
I swear to God, I was like,
Bob Backlund.
I was blessed. I could have lived the rest of my life never seeing him again, and I would have been at peace. But now I remember he's out there.
So of course Bob Backlund grabs the microphone while the Sultan is making his entrance and just starts screaming something about building a new bridge and that the Sultan was going to be the WWF champion and restore respect to the championship.
Bring us into the 21st century.
Right, which is hilarious because he's wearing like weird, like the costume that he's wearing looks like it was like ripped out of like what year? I don't even know.
The Sultan? Like the 17th century, 18th century? I don't even know.
Yeah, he's going to usher us into the 21st century or whatever. And I was like, this man looks like a Disney villain. I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, I said something terrible, which was his mask is cool, but then I was looking at it, I was like, it kind of looks like the wrapper of a Baby Bell cheese. I can't lie. Like God, that red wax.
That like red waxy, like shiny.
Because it is like
thing.
fixed to his face as if they kind of, and I was like looking at it, I was like, that looked like a Baby Bell cheese to me, but
you know what, go off.
I guess we're in the 21st century. I missed it.
So this match was very one-sided. The Pug really didn't get out of the blocks.
It always is with the Pug, poor boy.
One. Yeah, I know. He's really
poor lad.
He takes it. And so basically he got like a backbreaker done to him, which was absurd, and then gets put in the camel clutch and pretty much just like taps immediately. Again, all with the purpose of making the Sultan look impressive. I would be more impressed if this was happening week over week. You know what I mean?
Instead of just like, oh, it's that guy.
Like, every now and again, like they drag out the Sultan, he like crushes some guy that we like sort of kind of know, and then they kind of like don't show him again. If your intention is to make him like an intimidating, like kind of monster person, like you need to be putting him over more frequently, and he needs to be doing something more than just a kind of like singles match. You know what I mean? Like he should be like attacking people backstage. Like he should be like getting involved in other people's matches. He should be working his way up somewhere. But this like bringing him out every couple weeks and having like two past wrestlers just kind of scream around him before and after his match like isn't doing it for me.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. And like you said, you put him up against tougher competitors. Like
because
again, it's like the Pug and not to diss the Pug and, you know, like Freddie Joe Floyd or like whatever. It's like, okay, like
we know the result.
I
like,
get
you know
it. Yeah,
what
you
it
know
is.
what's happening in this situation.
Right.
You know what I mean? So it's like, can we something a little new, a little spicier? Right. I don't know.
So we'll see what happens there, like what they're gonna do with him. I know down the line he will get repackaged into something else, but I don't know how far they're gonna take this Sultan mess. All right, so after that we cut back to Kevin Kelly and Brian Pillman. So basically it cuts to like Kevin Kelly, and he is basically just like, I'm here with Brian Pillman, and Brian Pillman is shaking and like holding his gun, just like waiting for Stone Cold to show up. And then it cuts to like you hear this like glass breaking in the back, and the camera like turns around and you can see Stone Cold through the kitchen window is breaking the glass of the door, reaches in all nonchalant, unlocks it, and just lets himself in. And then it cuts to Brian Pillman pointing the gun at Stone Cold, and then the camera goes out.
Screaming. The wife is
howling.
Screaming as if someone is torturing her, like she's scared for her life because she is. Kevin Kelly is screaming. It was very stressful. They did a really good job of like making the chaos. Like, yes,
because it was aggressive and like it really seemed like nobody knew what was going on during like during this whole like segment and thereafter. It was very like, it seemed very like disjointed, very sudden, nobody really knew what was going on. There was a lot of like exasperation from the people in the house, like the commentators. Like it was a lot. So basically it cuts to Brian Pillman just like pointing the gun, and then it goes like all scratchy and gray. And that's basically the end of what we hear from that for like the next two like segments per se. Essentially
Basically the rest of the show until the very end.
Right. And they keep trying to like cut back to it, and they keep it like there's technical like issues. We'll
They
get
get the
into
tech
like
guy on the phone.
Yeah, we'll get into that. But after we kind of go back from that segment, it cuts to Jim Ross in the ring with this little podium in the center. And Vince is the entire time is basically being like, Jim Ross has no idea what's going on. Like, tee. And like, so like essentially Jim Ross is setting up this kind of face off kind of conversation between the WWF champion Shawn Michaels and the number one contender Sycho Sid. So they both like come down, they like do their little entrances, they like, set themselves up to get talked to. Sycho Sid
it looked like Family Feud. I'm just saying.
Really did. Like it was just a weird little podium.
Yeah.
So next week we are going to have Shawn Michaels and Sycho Sid as a tag team competing for the WWF Tag Team Championships, facing Owen Hart and the British Bulldog.
Which is so random still. I'm saying it one more time. It makes no sense. And it's going to be bad.
Well, yeah, but that's the point. Yeah. So essentially, Shawn Michaels says, or Jim Ross kind of moves on past like the championship match, being like, that's next week, but what we're here to talk about is the Survivor Series. So basically, Shawn Michaels goes in, is like basically described like he's the one that went and got Sycho Sid back into the WWF from like the loony bin or wherever he came from. And Sycho Sid comes back with like just shouts, he's like, that is bullshit. And then like he basically goes in to just be like, oh, like you think like if you want to believe that like you came in and like saved me, like by all means, like you can go right ahead and think that, but that's not what happened. And then Shawn is basically being like why you're back here. Like I don't need to like try to explain it to you or like these people. So like, what happened. So do with that information like what you want. And then JR, trying to stir the pot a little bit, asks about the accidental elbow strike that Sycho Sid did to Shawn Michaels while he was kind of rearing back to hit Owen Hart the previous week. Basically, they call JR on his BS. They're like, no, like it was an accident. Like
we
blah,
agree.
Blah, blah. We agree. Yeah. Like we talked about it. And then it starts getting a little heated because then Shawn Michaels starts like going off and is basically just being like you're not in my league. Bigger men than you have tried, bigger men than you have failed. It doesn't matter about size. Like I'm just better than you when it comes to ding, ding, bell, let's go. So obviously they start getting into each other's face because it's wrestling and that's what they do. Shawn Michaels then knocks the podium over and it folds like as if it literally as if it was like a pizza box or something, like just like,
or it was like
it was a house of cards. Yes. Like, it just like absolutely
he like flipped one thing and it was all like
it was a mess. I was like, okay, thank you for that like cardboard podium, guys.
That was assembled with like $1 in a dream. They were like, 100%. Whatever, just throw it up there.
We get Jim Cornette, who has apparently been newly reunited with his boys, all three of them, Bing Bang
which boom. Was weird and not addressed at all.
So Jim Cornette starts like coming down, yelling about like, oh, like Vader is the man that should have this title opportunity, blah, 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 blah. And they start kind of like circling the ring, which kind of forces Shawn and Sycho to kind of go like back to back and kind of protect each other because they're, there's a siege happening. And
there's a coup occurring.
Right. So Cornette's camp starts like entering the ring. They start like kind of making, start fighting. Shawn has the British Bulldog in one corner. Sycho Sid has Vader in the other. And that is when Owen Hart sneaks into the ring with a steel chair, smacks Sycho Sid with it. And that is when Shawn Michaels disarms him and grabs the chair. Thus, he clears the ring of Owen and the British Bulldog. Sycho Sid knocks Vader out, and he turns around to find Shawn Michaels holding the chair. Thus, when he was
caught with the weapon,
brain Shawn Michaels hit him in the back as like kind of a retribution for the accidental shot that happened
Elbow.
last week. So they start getting into each other's face, and that's when like a slew of referees start like coming down to the ring and like separating the two. So that's going to boil to a head next week. There is no way that next week's tag team match is not going to end up in some kind of confrontation between the two. So we're gonna just kind of see how that goes. I honestly I'm very excited for the match because I've said it before, like Shawn Michaels does his best work when he's facing somebody who is like just a like larger, just a larger person. Like he just does a really good job working up to bigger wrestlers. And regardless of like the outcome, Shawn is going to make Psycho Sid look like $1,000,000. He's going to make
Yep.
Psycho Sid look like the
Sells.
strongest man walking the earth. So either way, it's gonna be thoroughly entertaining. So that's something to look forward to at the pay-per-view. And then we get the main event, which is Mark Miro with Sable, Razor Ramon with Diesel. So
Why is this the main event? Not because of Mark Miro, but like I don't need to see Razor Ramon.
No,
not at this time.
So Mark Miro and Sable come out, looking like $1,000,000 with a little matchy costume. Today was a little blue, kind of like sequiny number with an open back for Sable. Because and she looked just like she looked
ripped.
I know. I was like, people don't talk about that enough. Like she's in shape.
In such good shape. Wow.
So they come out. Razor Ramon comes out with Diesel, much to like the collective eye roll of the entire arena. They're like literally his music hits, and there's just like an audible like from the crowd, like just like we're still doing this, and like, that is the general sentiment like across the board. Or like the crowd hates it. They don't want it. Like every time that they are brought out on television, the crowd like pay attention. They hate it.
It's more, I was gonna say it's more telling in their silence than it is because like
they're not even actively booing. They're disinterested.
It's literally like silent. Like if you look, they're all sitting and they're just like, and because at least if they're like, if it's someone you really, really don't like, you're engaged and you're like, boo, like you get into it.
Yeah,
like
you're love to hate them. Like
and they
don't even care. They don't even
care. Not even enough to like clap out of like decorum. There's like,
right.
And I get it.
I get it. Because I don't know what they were thinking. I don't know why they thought that we were all just gonna like accept it and like move on. Like it just
be like, was
right. And I know like part of it is like this like it is entrenched in the storyline with JR. Like JR is clearly like trying to do something with this.
Yeah.
But it's again one of those situations where sure, if that's the story you're gonna like try and tell, but I haven't seen Razor in like 3 weeks.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like it's the same deal where it's like if you want me to be invested in the story, like but either way, I'm not. But if you want to like make if you want to make the effort, then you have to make the effort. Like you cannot present a wrestler to me like once every month and expect me to care, especially not one that has already like you're already really stretching as far as like trying to get these people like to care about these two wrestlers in particular. I was like, you have already shot them in the foot by giving them characters that already exist. Like you're not even giving them the because now even if like they could be the best wrestlers in the world, they are now pigeonholed to do the like characteristics and like whatever of somebody else that they are not. Like it's not going to work because like every wrestler that I've ever like seen do like interviews or like even like Vince McMahon talks about it is like all of the best characters are essentially like who these people are just like turned up to 11.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So if the entire premise of these two characters is that they're somebody else, you're shooting them in the foot. They're never going to be able to turn it to 11 because they don't even know, like they can't even like get to 10. You know what I mean? Like because there's no way that they're going to effectively and convincingly get all of these people on their side. Like it just doesn't work. And like if they had like leaned into the like, oh, everybody hates me aspect of it more in the beginning, I feel like I would have been like, all right, fine. You know what I mean? If they had gone like way over the top, like and been like, if like JR had been on the mic every single time that they come down to the ring being like, this is Razor, this, you know what I mean? Like, then it's like oh, this is like a pointed thing. This is an
Mm-hmm.
intended, like, oh, I know that this clearly isn't what it is, but I want to shove it down your throat. Like, having him
Yep.
appear every now and again is just like,
Yeah, especially after all of the extended hype in bringing them in.
right.
Like it was such an ordeal having them come back, quote unquote, and then for them to just kind of be like, well, that was kind
Sure.
of a fluke and like whatever. I agree. Like if they had like sold it or like played it up, like every time they come out, they're like, yeah, boo, whatever. Like who cares? Like especially if they're going in this new direction where like they were like flipping people off and cursing and whatever, like really like engage with the crowd. Instead, they like never say anything
Right.
and they just kind of like appear, fight, disappear. Like it's kind of
And
it's
at
very
one point,
bland.
yeah, and at one point, like literally he what you call it, the fake razor like does like a little move and like does the little like razor like thing, and he literally just goes like the bad guy. Like I see him mouth the bad guy, which is like the like the tagline or like the name of Razor Ramon. He's supposed to be like the bad guy. But like,
Mm,
baby, you don't have to tell me that. Like
babe, we
I
know.
I feel like your actions should probably tell me that you're a bad guy. Like maybe
You would
maybe
think.
maybe start there. But essentially, I will have my gripes about this the entire time. So essentially during this match we do get kind of a phone call with the production team
Oh
of
yeah.
like whoever was at the house with Stone Cold and Brian Pillman. Essentially we get a phone call from his name's Kerwin Silfies, and he's apparently one of the production team like members, basically being like, the house is dark, we have no connection, Stone Cold's car is still here, there was some kind of like explosion or gunshot sounds, and then he gets cut off. Like he goes to like say something to like somebody, he like, you hear him go and like be like, hey, and then like he gets cut off,
Mm-hmm.
which is just extra
Harrowing.
alarming.
Yeah.
So then Vince McMahon joins commentary after this point, and starts calling out Vince for basically like not taking responsibility for this, essentially being like, oh, like, are you really like so surprised that like Stone Cold told you he was going there and you sent a camera crew anyway? He's like, you knew what you were doing. You knew this would be good for TV and ratings. Like, and you didn't care like about the safety of like all of these people. Like, it doesn't matter to you, does it? As long as you get your like whatever. And
Little check.
Vince was kind of like taken aback. Like he was like, "Oh, like don't get like smart with me." Like he like didn't really have like a response to it. JR's
Uh,
right. Like it's not like, what I mean, like you are. He's like, um, Vince goes and says like, "Oh, like before you came out here, I said like the WWF is like responsible for like their part." And I was like, and Vince is like, "Ah, that's you. You're in charge. Are you not? Are you not the head honcho?" Like, and he was just like, like yes." And he was like, "Then you're responsible for anything that happens."
then
And
you're
he was just like,
responsible.
and like Vince really didn't really like have a whole lot to say. And then Jerry the King starts like being like, once again, just being like, hey, like, can we call the match? Like, you two, we cannot keep doing this. Like, you two come out here and like don't just spend more time fighting with each other, and nobody's calling the match.
Yep.
And like, it's bad when Jerry is the voice of reason.
That's
That's
what
what
I was gonna say. I was gonna say because
it's bad when that man, that horn dog of a man, is out here being like the just what?
that
No.
misogynist psychopath is the only logical person at the table. Scary. Like,
Scary.
because he actually said before JR got on commentary, he said to Vince, like, I just think this is like kind of wrong. Like, did anyone call the police like to protect like their
His
house and
family,
their
like,
family? And like this just seems like weird that we're like we keep like making a spectacle of this. Like, and I was like, the fact that he is saying that is
right.
crazy to me. And he was he also said like the fact that you guys really didn't believe that Stone Cold was gonna show up is crazy, because that's all he does is anytime he says he's gonna be there, he's showing up, knock knock, like what's up.
Right.
Like, so
Well, I don't know
I
why you're all surprised. Like, I don't understand. Like, Yeah.
Yeah,
And,
but then when JR and Vince were scrapping at the table, he was like, okay, can we like talk about the match? Like, look, Sable's ringside, let's talk about that. He never wants to talk about Sable. He hates her. He's always talking
right.
about how ugly her hair is, how horrible her dress is, like whatever. And he goes, look, Sable's at ringside. Can we talk about that? And I was like, it must be
So
really bad down there.
he's
Energy must
reaching.
be heinous down there because he was like, look at that. Like,
Yo,
oh
bad.
wow, it was a cover and a rollout or whatever.
So
Like
bad.
it's so bad.
It's
It's
so
so
like and
crazy.
like and then the rest of the time like they're very like low energy. And like Vince like apologizes like on air and is like, I'm sorry that we're like not like I feel like he got like a little bit thrown by whatever
Flustered.
JR said.
Yeah.
Um and like couldn't really recover. And not necessarily from like a like, oh, like JR like wasn't supposed to say those things because you know it's all a TV show,
Mm-hmm.
but more that I feel like JR went like a step further than he thought he was going to, and
Mm-hmm.
kind of like didn't know how to get back, like get the reins back. It cuts to kind of Mark Miro doing some fancy moves. He's outmaneuvering Razor Ramon.
I
But
forgot about this.
Triple H and Mr. Perfect come out to ringside, and at one point Triple H fully just like yeets Mark Miro like
The top rope.
off of the top rope, which allows Razor to get the Razor's edge, thus giving him the victory.
As if Triple H and Mr. Perfect have not done enough.
Enough.
Like the man has lost the title, and now before when he was competing against Vader and Shawn Michaels and whatever, now he's competing against fake Razor Ramon and like getting his ass whooped. I was just like, what?
Right.
What? Like what? Why are we tearing this man down? I was like, the two of you with your stupid little ponytails and your nasty suits can get on because like I'm like, you haven't done enough this long con, and now you got to come out here and ruin my night by having to look upon you and coming out here and knocking him off the top rope and ruining his night. No, I'm sorry, I'm done. I'm irritated.
Dude.
I just don't understand. Like what? And again, and I guess like Mr. Perfect's supposed to go on like the live like phone show
Live
that they
wire,
do.
yeah.
Yes. And like I guess is going to explain like why he did what he did because I still want to know because I still don't understand and why we're even like making it like digging deeper. Like you already got the title, you already did your little thing. Like what are we doing?
Why are we still going after this man? Like
Yeah,
what
like
does this
come
man have that you
on.
want? Like
He doesn't have anything left.
honestly.
Nothing.
But
And
sometimes that's kind of their MO. Like
yeah, of course, like kick them when
I'm
they're
gonna leave
down,
you
but
destitute, you know?
yeah, and I think that it was, I don't know if it was JR or one of the announcers said something about how like Mr. Perfect allegedly like made a pass at Sable like not long
Oh
ago.
yeah.
And
I
so
heard
and
that.
she was just like
Nope.
no. And I was like, good for
That's
you,
right.
girl.
That's
Stand by
right.
your man. But that
Um
made me mad.
so and then after that it cuts to they do like a little recap of the entire scenario at Brian Pillman's house, and then they say like they got a live feed like again.
They're like, we got it, roll it.
So and then it cuts to it's basically all of Brian Pillman's friends like restraining Brian Pillman back, and then like he's like screaming. The wife is still sobbing,
Screaming.
just like absolutely unwell. And then Stone Cold comes back inside, comes just barreling back in, and
Yeah,
then
because they said he
Kelly's like
left.
yelling, like call the police. Like the wife is actually screaming, just like howling, screaming, crying, and like Brian Pillman's like knocked over. Be like you see, like the last thing is like he's like falls like off of the couch. Like it's chaos. There's like a swarm of people like restraining Stone Cold. Like it's a mess. And then all the while, like Jerry the King's like, did anybody get shot? Did anybody get shot? And you're just like, what is happening? Like what is going on? And so like, and then that's it. It just whoosh.
It just ends.
Yep.
It just ends.
It ends with just Brian Pillman just waving
the gun. That's what I was gonna say. In all that chaos, because first of all, they were like, Jerry the King is screaming, did anyone get shot? Did anyone get shot? And they're like, no, when Stone Cold saw the gun, he ran for it, and then somehow the power was cut, and then da-da-da. But then this whole time while they're restraining him, they're pushing and fighting. The wife is screaming, Kevin's screaming, call the cops. Stone Cold busts in. They're
and
fighting.
Apparently there's a truck full of tech people
tech
also
guys
out there just like afraid to come inside fair
and
because
and
man's armed, but like
I get it.
A truck full of people also outside.
Yeah,
like it's just like what is
but the
happening?
whole time the whole time, and you don't realize it until the end. Brian Pillman with the gun, just waving the
Waving it
gun
around.
willy-nilly like it's a sparkler on 4th of July. I
And
was like, what?
not nary a police officer. I didn't even get like a stripper police officer. You didn't
Not
get
even a fake one.
nothing.
Not even a mall cop. Not even Paul Blart on his
Coming down on his
fucking-
little yes, absolutely.
Nothing.
Nothing. I was like, where are the authorities? Maybe
they
because
said-
they couldn't figure out what city he was in. Maybe that's what happened.
Is he in Kentucky? Is he in Cincinnati? Like, where is he? But it was crazy because they asked, like, are the police coming? And the tech guy was like, well, we called them, but like we're in the sticks. I don't even think they know how to get here. And I was like, what are we talking about right now?
Yeah.
Like, this is so it was so insane.
Chaotic.
Talk about like blurring the lines of like what's real and what's not.
Right.
Like,
and I will say, I'm pretty sure that WWF gets in trouble a little bit with the network that they are on
for the gun
for this because it was not really like it wasn't because it was the reality thing was so like blurred on it. Like it gave the presentation that like this man broke into this other dude's house and he was armed and was pointing a gun at him, and then you don't get any resolution. So it's not like it's like a television show where like, you know, like they like hear the gun bang and then it like cuts to black and you're like, oh, okay, like clearly this is like a scene.
And they're like,
it's
to
not
be
even
continued.
like
Yeah.
it because it was so chaotic and so like the line of reality was like blurred. I'm pretty sure they got in a little bit of trouble from the network being like, you can't do that. Like,
and they should have.
And so
I love it, and I'm glad it happened because it was crazy, and like knowing in the future that no one got hurt. But imagine watching that in real time.
That's
like
what
that's
I'm
crazy.
saying.
Because I want to say I'm pretty sure Stone Cold broke the window with his bare hands, which is crazy because it's glass, and I'm sure he's cut up. And if not, I don't even know because he just like breaking the glass.
Mm-hmm.
And then also that wife, she deserves like an Emmy or something because like she was selling it. She was screaming, crying on the couch, running her hands through her hair, just like, oh my God, my house.
Oh,
like
I
it
know.
was crazy.
She was getting that check. You know what I mean?
And
they said
Kevin
Kelly.
I love that guy. And he like, why is he in that scenario? Didn't he say that he was like, why am I even here? Like, why am I here?
That was the energy I got from him, where he's just like, call the police. Like, what are we doing?
Oh, like
literally at one point they ask him a question. He's like, I have no idea what's going on here. He's like, honestly, this is kind of ridiculous. And like, it's just like,
he's like, I can't really hear you, and I don't know why I'm here. Like,
basically, he's just like, I don't understand. Like, I was like, this man is armed. Like, why did you put like, you know what I mean? Like, what kind of employer sends all of these employees? Just like, mind you, they're all employees. This is like a hostage situation. Like, what's
Kevin,
going on?
Who wanted to be a wrestling announcer probably since he was a child, and like is in a house clutching that mic back against the wall while Brian Pillman waves a gun and he's screaming, call the police. I mean,
get that
in
man.
Cincinnati, Kentucky. I don't know, but he like that
Maybe
man.
we can get Goldust to like sit in his lap or something.
Yeah, hump his face, Goldust.
Oh, he would. All right, so that's how it ends. Essentially. So we are gonna have more on that. We are a few weeks removed from the SummerSlam pay-per-view, which is gonna be wild. We're gonna see the debut of The Rock, The Undertaker, and Mankind are
the
gonna
Survivor
go
Series.
Survivor
right?
Series, yes.
Yes.
What did I say?
SummerSlam.
Oh, LOL.
And I was like, wait a minute.
No. Sorry, Survivor Series. I misspoke. So it's gonna be fantastic. I think we're now kind of like, as far as the character work, we're now kind of really getting into the Attitude Era. So we're gonna start seeing these characters really come into their own and really kind of push the envelope as far as what we're used to seeing thus far. I think that's gonna be very exciting.
Talk about a jump.
Talk about a jump. And as far as like the quality of product, and this is only in like a couple weeks. Like this, let's say like I want to say like up until the Boiler Room Brawl pay-per-view, like even from then to now is a jump. And they were starting to head towards that direction.
And it's interesting to even just look at like the genesis of our episodes, because like the matches were not that they were tame, but we were talking about like, let's rate our matches, like our favorite from like first to last, like when we first started. But so much happens, we're just like, I don't even know how to make sense of this. Like, again, and I say this every week, it's like Charlie from whatever
Always
It's
Sunny in
always sunny
Philadelphia.
with the cigarette and just like, well, then he was in the house, like, and I don't know the power cut. Like, it's like because we don't even like
Literally, you before we started this episode, you were like, I can't wait to be like secondhand, like
embarrassed.
stressed.
I was scared. Yeah, I was like, because I thought it was gonna be more awkward. Because when you were saying like this clip circulates all the time, I thought it was gonna be like some sort of weird, like Stone
No,
Cold just like moseys in the house and like
oh
it's
no,
kind of. I thought it was gonna be like an
it's
awkward thing.
it lives on for so long because it's so like just like jarring. Like it's such a like what the kind of moment that like it just lives like just forever.
It was so not what I expected, but I'm also so happy it happened, even though I'm still shell shocked and will
I
be
know, but
thinking about
like,
this
but you're
forever.
really like, do you understand who Stone Cold is now? Like, do you
I
get it?
mean, I love him. I love him. Even before this all happened, the promo, I was like, this is just great. This is
Right.
just great. And I
Like
just
I'm telling, he's coming into his own, and it's
I
so
love
good.
it. And it's
It,
so meteoric, like out of the blue, just like pew, like a
yeah,
shot.
yeah, because up
No
in
pun
like
intended, but
literally, but no, up until this point, like right before this, like when he debuted, he was the ringmaster. That's
uh,
what we called him. Like,
uh,
and that, what do you do with that? Nothing. You don't do
nothing.
anything with that. And they finally kind of like let him be in charge of like his
The brand.
character,
Yeah,
and this is what's happening.
I love
So,
it. But props to
so
him because I mean, who could ever? Because it's not even like he has like a. I mean, Stone Cold is like a name, like kind of like the Undertaker or whatever. But it's like just
mm.
Stone Cold and all this like depth and like expansion and everything. Like props to that man because seriously, like
And
wild.
again, like we are still in the very much so in the beginning.
Which
Uh,
how do we?
I know it gets.
I'm gonna have to like I don't
It's
know start
you.
meditating or something.
I can't wait. It's gonna. Yeah, you're gonna. Yeah. We are only barreling towards more and more exciting things. And on that note, that is this week's episode of the New to Wrestling podcast. As always, we appreciate you kind of listening to us wherever you find podcasts. And we will catch you next week and
We'll
the
see you
next
there.
week. And we are barreling towards the Survivor Series.
So
All right,
wild.
guys. See ya.
We'll see you next week. Bye.
Bye.